Hi guys, welcome back. Hope things are going well. And today we kick it up another notch, as they say, and we learn to work with worksheet controls. Specifically, we're going to learn how to implement a combo box and a list box control within an Excel spreadsheet as another way to accept user input. So the lecture is going to be divided into three sections. First, we'll start off and just sort of experiment ourselves with the combo box and list box controls. Then we'll take a look at a practical application, and then we'll finish up and provide you with an exercise to practice implementing specifically the list box control and the input as a sort of a form of review. All that and more today. All right, so let's just acquaint ourselves first of all how these new controls work, where are they, and how you can implement them, and then obviously we'll do a more practical application. Down here where it says sheet 1, let's rename that first to main. Okay, and then we're going to add another sheet. This sheet is going to store our sort of raw data. You'll see what I mean in a second, but let's just call this sheet lists. Okay, might actually only have one list, but we'll put it in as a plural for now. Let's go back to the main screen, and right about here, what we're going to do is add this new thing called a combo box. Let's switch to the developer ribbon and insert. Okay, so we've been here before, and we've actually picked a couple of the form controls. We've picked that one for sure. What we're going to do now is go into these ActiveX controls and see that one right there, combo box, and then later on we're going to do this one here, list box. So let's just press it once, and then it wants us to specify a section where we want to put it, so we'll put it right about there, and we'll let grow, and that's a combo box. Now there's nothing in it. It doesn't really do anything yet. That's where this list comes in. All right, so why don't we drop over into the list worksheet now. Okay, and we don't want really people looking at this. That's why we're putting it on a separate sheet, but you could put it on the main sheet if you wanted to. Let's write down a couple of cities across the world, and since I'm from Canada, we'll put Toronto first. We'll put Paris. We'll put New York and Rome. Okay, so there's a list of cities. We're going to highlight them all. We're going to give them a name. We'll just call them cities. We'll press OK. And now we can go back to our main form. Okay, now we have to make this combo box have a life of its own. So we need to do something to its properties. Now, I don't know if we've touched upon that before, but over here in the Developer tab, we're going to press Properties, and this thing over here appears, which has tons and tons of information, all kinds of things unique to this combo box. First thing we're going to do is go up here where it says the name, and we're going to change the name of the combo box because we're going to need to refer to it in code in a few minutes. So I'm going to type it in as CBO. Okay, actually let's slow down a bit. CBO city. That's a property that we're going to call. So every time we refer to this combo box, we're going to call it CBO city. The most important property is coming up next. We need to fill that information that we just typed in that worksheet called lists in here. That's kind of the way to get the information in there. So there's a property called list fill range, and I'm pretty sure we spelt it as cities like that. Okay, so that's going to fill up the combo box. Here's kind of like the proof now. So you would think you could just click on this now and you would see them all. But what you have to realize is you are now in design mode. You're going to see me toggling this on and off. Now, it was on automatically as soon as I put the combo box there. So if I press it again, I am now out of design mode, and now I can actually see it working. Oh, and there they are now. So I press on New York. I can press on Rome. Now, the only problem is you press on them, and so what? What happens? How does the computer actually know that you pressed on them? Now we got to do some coding. Now to do some coding, we have to go back into design mode. You'll know because it turns into those like little arrows there. Now watch, we're going to double click and enter the programming world. Do not be afraid. Double click on here, and now we're in the coding world, right? And we're going to just type in something really simple just to prove that when we press on something, the computer knows it. So we're going to type in message box, you chose, and then another quote, and then we're going to append to that, okay, or concatenate to that. We called our combo box CBO city dot, and there's a property called text. So whatever we press on, it'll know it in that particular spot. Okay, that's it for that code. Let's get out of this. And again, still we're in design mode. To test this out, we're going to have to leave design mode and then pick a city. Paris. You chose Paris. Great. Let's try another one. Toronto. You chose Toronto. So that's how it knows that I've actually clicked on something. Let's delve a little deeper. How about as I pick this, it puts it in a cell, because really that's what we want eventually to do. Have this nice user interface put information for us in a cell where we're going to do maybe some math or some sort of calculations later on. So let's figure out how to program now after we pick something to put it in a cell. All right, as before, we're going to have to enter design mode. Good. We'll double click. We'll go back into here. We're going to space this out a little bit because we're going to type in some other information that we need. Remember that dim stuff we did before? So we're going to have to dim a sheet, and we'll call it main as a worksheet. Okay. And then we're going to have to set that to a value. So sheet main will be equal to, and now we got to type in all that big long thing, application dot work books, and I'll use the shortcut method, work sheets. Okay, so that's going pretty good. Now I'm going to still say the message box, but then after the message box appears, I'm going to slide whatever word I chose, whatever city I chose, into cell F3. So let's code that. So it's going to be sheet main dot range and then bracket F3 and then dot value equals, and remember whatever I picked will be in text. Okay, so that's how you would code that. All right, let's get out from the underground and actually see if it works. Remember, we're still in design mode. So let's close off design mode and we'll pick a city, and it says New York, and now it puts it in the cell. So there you have our first implementation of the combo box. 2 reasons to use it. It makes it user-friendly, so you just pick from a nice list, and it also will reduce errors because instead of having a person type in something and maybe mess up your spreadsheet because they spelt it wrong, now it's automatically being picked from a list. Now before we experiment with the list box, slightly different version of the combo box, what some people do because they get nervous after they make these beautiful spreadsheets is they like to protect their spreadsheet, meaning that don't allow anyone to touch it after it's sort of set in its way. So you can press here and protect the worksheet and press OK. Now what will happen is when you go back, even as a developer, when you try to change something, all right, it will not let you. Okay, I can't even get rid of that, all right, because the sheet's protected. So you'll find yourselves once you're totally done protecting your worksheet. Now, if you ever come across one that's already protected and you want to change it, then you have to go back to review and then you unprotect the sheet. And now you can see that I can modify it. All right, let's experiment now with the list box. We're going to go to ActiveX controls. We're going to pick this one right here, the list box. We're going to draw it right here. We're going to draw it fairly big because a list box basically displays all the values right away as opposed to a combo box which shows you one and you can drop down and see the rest. So that's the first thing. Next, let's take a look at its properties, and we'll go up here to this property section and we'll rename it. Okay, and we'll call it list and then city. Next property I want to change is the list fill range, but before I do it, I'm going to go back to the list worksheet and rename it. Now you're saying, well, that's a waste of time. It's already there. It's called cities. Well, I'm going to add a title to this and then actually not even highlight it, but it'll be part of it. Trust me. So I'm going to highlight just this part again, and I'm going to rename it. I'll call it new cities. Okay, and then I'll press OK. Now I'll go back to this, and where it says list fill range, I'll type in new cities, and there they are. But I want to show you something different. Column head false. I'm going to press true, and now that appears at the top. If I didn't rename it, it wouldn't have worked. Okay, and you're saying, well, you didn't even highlight cities. Well, it's kind of neat how this list box works. It will grab that just above the list of names or whatever I used. And there you have now a list box, and we're going to program it, of course. Now for this list box, I'm going to code it in a different event. First of all, I'm going to double click to enter the code world. But watch what I'm going to do here. I don't want to just have it wake up when I click on it. I'm going to go up here and pick double click. That's weird, eh? So I'm going to rub this one out. I don't want it to be just on a single click. When I double click, I want it to wake up. And now I'm just going to get lazy. And I'm going to copy and paste all this stuff up here. All right, now I will make a couple of small changes, but basically it's almost the same as this. I'm going to sneak it in here. Okay, so the worksheet stuff is exactly the same. You chose, well, when you chose something, it's not going to be combo, it's going to be LST. And we'll still put it into F3, but again, it's going to be LST. I think that's it. All right, we'll close that off. Are we still in design mode? Yes, we are. We'll get out of design mode. And now when I press once, nothing happens. When I double click, it says I chose Paris, and then it puts Paris in there. Isn't that cool? So there we have our two worksheet controls that we want to focus in on today's lecture. And we've been just sort of fooling around with them right now. We've had our combo box, okay? And then we put it in there. And this one had the double click event, okay? Just a different way to access it and then store it in that particular spot. Let's pick Paris to make sure that you prove that it works, okay? Now we're going to do a sort of a practical application incorporating some of these ideas. All right, here's the scenario today. I run an electronics store and people order particular models of computers, let's say, and when they pick a model of a computer, we assign a certain discount rate to it. So what I'm going to do in this application is have a list box over here on the left-hand side. When I double click on it and pick the model, I'm going to prompt using an input box for a discount rate. Once I type in the percentage, it will display the new value of the computer that the person's buying. All right, and I'm going to leave this list in front of you this time and not hide it in another worksheet, but you'll get the basic idea. Okay, here's the solution that we're going to explain to you. This is obviously in your resources for today's lecture. It's called Price List VBA. I like it for a number of reasons. It introduces the topic we're doing right now, the list box. We're going to do a double click event. We're going to review the input box, and we're also going to review a lookup table. So this thing right here, I've named price list, and that'll be very important in our whole progress, because when I click on one of these models, we're going to have to search this two-column table. And when we find a particular model, in this case H290, I need it to know that it's 2,299. So we'll have to remember that VLOOKUP stuff. Okay, so all kinds of neat things happening. Now, if you've already started clicking on these sheets and going, hey, I can't do anything, and I'm waiting for him to explain it to us, but I wanted to try it too. Remember, go to Review and unprotect the sheet. There you see those little double arrows now. Now we can get in there and do some stuff. So let's take a look at this list box first, okay? So let's go to Properties, and just to review, I called it List Model, and I by hand typed in the fill range, so I had to go from F3 down to F13. I could have also gone here and named just that little piece something, but I didn't, okay? I did name all of this, remember, price list. Okay, I think we're set up now. Let's go into the underground. Don't be alarmed, it's not that bad. But remember, we're going to activate one of these choices based on the double click event. So let's double click and get into the underground and see what's going on here. Now, when you double click on what particular computer you want, magically right away, we're going to prompt and ask you, okay, now what's the discount rate, okay? And you see that right here. Now I'm sort of going backwards, but I just wanted you to realize when you double click on here, the computer will know automatically what computer you've picked, and now it's asking for a rate. And now let's check our declaration. So when you type in 7%, 8%, remember it's always got quotes on it at the beginning. So that's the rate right now as a string. And then we're going to take that and take the quotes off of it. Now this time, because you could write 7.5% and stuff like that, those are decimal numbers. So we've been declaring basically integers up to now. See that word double? Double means decimals for the most part, okay? And the last thing is we're going to work out the current price and the discount price, and it's going to be money. So for the first time, we're also going to declare some variables that are currency format. Okay, rest of it's pretty straightforward. We're going to have a sheet, the computer sheet, and declare it as a worksheet, obviously. and then we'll set ourselves to point to that particular sheet. Now we've been talking a little bit about how the worksheet's now protected and then unprotected and protected. So for us to go in and change numbers now after we prompt, we're going to have to unprotect the worksheet just for a little bit and then we'll turn it back on. Okay, here's our input routine where we ask the person for their discount rate. This takes the quotes off of it, converts it to a decimal, and stores it into this new variable which we have assigned as a double. Next, we're going to, for the first time ever, convert this information so that we can use it in a VLOOKUP, but in code. All right, so here's how you'd say in VBA to VLOOKUP something. So remember now, we've got this thing we picked from the list, and we're going to try to figure out how much the money, how much it costs, right? So application worksheet function.VLOOKUP. So we're going to pass it what's in that list box, whatever we double clicked on. And then we're going to search for it. Like I mentioned, I called that entire chart a price list chart. Then we're going to go to the second column, and false implies that we have to find the exact match. Okay, that will come back with the magic current price. Now we just got to do some math ourselves. We have the current price, and we're going to take a discount off of it from whatever we inputted in there, right? And that'll give us our final price. And then what we'll do is display the rate in C6 and display the current discount price in D6 as our final result. And we'll turn the protection back on. It's almost like shut it down again. That's it. All right, let's close this off and test it out. Now, right now we are kind of in design mode still, so let's undo that. Okay, so I'll click on J480. Right away it asks me type in a percentage discount. We're going to give that person 10% off and press OK. So there's the 10% discount and then our final price of $1,080. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this lecture, we kicked it up a notch, okay? A bit more complicated now, but I think still doable in small chunks like we've been doing it, but you need to practice, you really do. Okay, so in the resources for today's lecture, you will find this PDF file, which is the exercise that I would like you to try. And as usual, you'll have your base file and the solution, your base file and the solution. I always, don't leave you hanging. I always want you to make sure you have the right answers. We also are going to take this up in our next lecture as a little recap and a review before we get into our next lecture's material, just to show you what exactly the problems are. You're going to load up in this first one something for an exercise club, and you're going to use a list box, and there's going to be a number of calculations, so it's going to be quite challenging, but it refers back to the material that we did. You need to practice. And then the second one is more for a computer store type situation, and again, a nice little question that makes you revisit what we've just covered and see if you really understand the material. And again, if you do get confused, we are going to take this up at the beginning of our next lecture. Okay, so hopefully now I've given you a good solid base. Give this a practice. Okay, you really get on the bike and try it out. Okay, you have to do it. Take care. We'll see you in the next lecture.